Thank you everyone for joining this morning. What I am going to cover today is primarily focused on the PRINCE2 update, but before I do, I just wanted to share some research that we've conducted primarily over the last 6 months, which I think on the one hand should be quite interesting, but also read into some of the key themes around the update. And a lot of this research, I think, validates a lot of the thinking that went into the PRINCE2 2017 update. I'll then shift focus onto the update itself and hopefully answer many of the key questions that you have about the update, and if not, we'll look to answer any of those questions in the Q&A at the end of the session. And then I'll sort of finish up by having a look at looking forward at some of the things that are coming forward in relation to the update itself. So just to give a very brief introduction to Axelos before I do begin. So Axelos was founded in 2013 and took over the best practice portfolio, of which you can see more or less all of our products on the right-hand side of the screen. We've, as a business, primarily focused on launching new products, either new areas for the whole portfolio, like Resilia, which focuses on cyber resilience, or adding additional products into the existing portfolio with the likes of PRINCE2 Agile and Agile Practitioner. So what the PRINCE2 update sees for us as a business is it's the first sort of major update of an existing certification product within our portfolio. So it's been a very exciting year for us, and we hope that the changes that have been made will be very valuable to the community at large, and hopefully you'll see some of that come through in the presentation today. So before I do go into the details around the update, as I mentioned, I want to cover just a couple of recent findings from some research that we've published. What you can see on the right-hand side of the screen is a report which was published last week, and it's available on the homepage of axelos.com if you do want to go into it and download a copy, which is looking at well, this is the first in what I hope becomes a yearly report, benchmarking various trends and key topics within the PPM industry. And research is something that Axelos as business is very interested in publishing more of, and I hope that in the sort of snippets that I show today, you find them sort of useful and interesting. So if I jump into the first of sort of 3 kind of topics around the research that I wanted to focus on, and I promise you they'll be very, very brief before I do jump into talking about the update in more detail. These stats that you can see on the screen came from the Future Project Manager report that we published in February this year. So we asked a range of questions, and these are very much about how the role of the project manager and project management project management as a skill would be changing over time. So if we look at the left-hand one, we've got 90% of respondents felt that the role of the project manager needed to become more strategic. And a similar, or exactly the same number, also agreed that project managers needed to become agents of change. And then if we look at the right-hand one, 57% agree that the importance of the human factor within project management would still be important, so not as strong a stat as the other 2. There was also another stat that came out of this research that 76% believe that project management would become a basic business skill. And I think from all of this, what we believed is, what we see is a splitting of the project management profession into 2 directions. So on the one hand, project management is very much, we see, going to become a basic business skill, which is adopted by functions across the business, whether it's marketing, HR, finance, events management, operations, onboarding new clients. But ultimately, a lot of these roles are fulfilling project management, even if they don't necessarily see themselves as a project manager. And then on the other side, we also see project managers becoming more strategic, increasing their skill set, and really growing as a profession. So how does this relate to the update? What we're really seeing is, or what we believe the update will help do, is that it will cater for both these audiences. So PRINCE2, and I'll talk about it in a lot more detail around how we think that it's going to be a lot more easier to tailor the method, and much more flexible, can be used in these variety of roles, whether it's as I said, marketing, HR, etc. But also that PRINCE2 still is that I suppose that foundation, that rock bed of the project management profession, giving people the sort of the best practice and what they the sort of things that they should be doing in their role as a project manager. Shifting over to now the research that I showed you the front cover of at the beginning of this section, around our benchmark study. We asked all the project managers who responded to this report, and this was a global survey of just over 550 project managers. And we asked them to assess their maturity, and we loosely aligned the 5 levels that you can see on the left-hand side of the screen to our P3M3 model, maturity assessment model. Now, obviously, this is a very sort of basic question, and that model is a very complex tool that our consulting partners use. And typically as well, we do see that self-assessments score higher than independent assessments conducted by those consulting partners. But I think what this is starting to show, or give an indication of, is where the level of maturity is within the PPM industry. And if we look at this, over half stated that they have some maximum some established processes in place, but no monitoring or evaluation of what they're doing in any way. And when we took those and matched them versus more mature organisations, what we saw is that those less mature organisations are more likely to experience project failure by 60%. So quite a stark figure. So, what's the importance of this? Why is this being presented on an update around the PRINCE2 update? I think it's despite how fast-moving the business world is today, how important things like technology, or as you mentioned, AI on the previous slide, that there is still very much a place for best practice and process. It is by no means sort of the be-all and end-all and the one solution that's required, but I think it goes to show the importance of having good process in place, and learning from the experience of others through best practice. And now the final bit I wanted to focus on from the research was around Agile. Now, back last year, we conducted another piece of research, which is more focused on our products, and actually started as an internal project before we published it publicly in around April, May last year, I believe. But during that study, we asked respondents to firstly rate the value they placed on working in an agile way. And then we also asked them to rate the appetite their organisation had, or they believe their organisation had, to adopt agile. And there was a significant gap between the two. So people placed a lot more value on agile, but didn't see this being reciprocated at an organisational level. We asked the same question again this year, and although that gap has slightly reduced, it's still significant. So the number I've painted across the slide shows that that there's still this gap, and people are struggling, I think, to see their organisations adopt agile techniques and frameworks, and I suppose the agile culture or way of working as much as they think that they should. And why is this? Well, we believe it's still very much down to this fear of adopting agile at a management level. So the perception that adopting agile results in a lack of control. I think some of the sort of higher profile agile failures, and I think why is this important to the update? Well, we believe very much that something like PRINCE2, particularly in certain organisations, can help bridge this gap. PRINCE2 does bring a little bit more governance, a little bit more control into that sort of project management, that change environment. And I think the update as well, and I'll come on to that in more detail later, is around how much you can tailor PRINCE2, and within the update there are specific examples of how to update PRINCE2, sorry, how to tailor PRINCE2 in an agile context. Okay, so without further ado, let me move on to the update itself. And what I'm going to do is start by giving just a little bit of the context and the process that we went through to develop the update, some of the things that we were trying to address with it, but then I will quite quickly move into what the major changes are within the update itself. So I suppose the first question we ask ourselves is why did we decide to update PRINCE2? Well, I think as a sort of very simple level, the last major update to PRINCE2 was 8 years ago. And the business world has moved on, and I think things have changed. So at the very least, we had to have a look at whether PRINCE2 was still valid, whether it did need an update, did it need a complete rewrite, did we need to rip it up and start again, which, by the way, we haven't, but those are the sort of questions we have to look at. Over the years as well, we have collected an awful lot of community feedback. This has come through all those things listed on the slide there. So, for example, attending conferences and trade show events. We've captured a change log on our website for a number of years now, spoken to a lot of our accredited community, and engaged with a lot of our community who are part of Axelos.com through the surveys, some of the types of surveys that I mentioned, but also through the last point there around content. So people have created blogs for us, they've created white papers. So we've taken all of this information in, and that's helped feed into the update itself. And then finally, the research that I've covered as well. I think the one thing I did want to add, which I haven't mentioned on the research front, is we did run a consultation to our accredited community back in January 2016, of which well over 3/4 of our partners agreed that PRINCE2 did need an update, and we've got lots of qualitative feedback within that as well. So within all that feedback, what did we hear? What are the sort of things that we needed to address in the update itself? I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think some of the core themes that came out, areas for improvement. One, tailoring is not visible enough, or was not visible enough. So it wasn't examined on. It was a chapter hidden at the back, and I think the only way in which it came into the foundation exams, can you tailor PRINCE2? Yes, no, maybe, not sure, as your options. There wasn't any explicit guidance on organisations adopting PRINCE2, so could we provide that more specific guidance for people and organisations adopting PRINCE2? There were other things that we covered around sort of pre and post project activities. So I think organisations have focused a lot more on things like benefits realisation, and I think it's that move for project managers to become more strategic. It's not simply about delivering a product and ignoring any of the outcomes or outputs from that product. And also looking at better alignment with the rest of our portfolio, with a particular emphasis on, it's not put on the slide, but MSP and also MOR. Okay, so production, or the project kicked off the back end of 2015. And we spent most of last year working very hard on developing it. I've put on this slide that it's involved over 100 people. I think that's sort of directly involved in the development process itself. How does that look? So there's a lot of Axelos staff would have been involved in it, from the product teams, commissioning, examinations, translations, accreditations, etc. But in terms of an external audience who were involved in developing it, there were 3 authors for the guidance. This was supported by 3 mentors. There was an examination team across foundation and practitioner of around 10. And then we had nearly 80 reviewers of the guidance across 2 different review stages. And just to give you an idea of the scale of that work, I think in those 2 review stages we got around about 3,500 comments. Not to say that the product wasn't of particularly high quality, but when you are reviewing such a significant piece of work, that there were lots of comments to work through. And then we were also supported by an advisory group, a number of advisory groups built from the community. What I would also want to add to this slide is that in terms of the development and making sure that there's a high quality product at the end of it, we did have over 250 trainers attend trainer readiness sessions as well, which took place over 5 countries, one of which was Australia, and there was lots of feedback from that, both in terms of those trainers sitting the exams, but also anecdotal feedback that we captured, and around 20 people in some controlled courses we conducted with non-trainers as well, one of which was myself as a guinea pig for the new practitioner exam. So I think the main thing to take away here is that there was a concerted effort to create something which was high quality and was built in a collaborative way. I think we would like to do even more on this in future product development, but it's something which had an awful lot of people involved in to get to the end product, which the book is already published, and the exams will be available publicly from next week as well. So who was involved? I've mentioned a lot of the people already. I'm not going to go through this slide in any detail, but this just gives you a bit of an idea of the authors, the mentors, and the examiners. What we tried to do is ensure that there was people who were experienced, both authoring PRINCE2 guidance and also creating PRINCE2 exams, but also people who could bring a fresh perspective and fresh ideas to the table. Just a couple of points I wanted to pick on from here. We specifically had Andy Murray be part of the mentoring team, as he was the author in 2009. And he could provide context to a lot of the decisions that were made in 2009 and why they're in there. Keith Richards was the lead author on PRINCE2 Agile, so wanting to make sure that there was that consistency between PRINCE2 and PRINCE2 Agile. And then also Michelle Rowland, who is the chief examiner for PRINCE2, so making sure that the guidance itself was developed in a way that could be easily examinable, which hadn't always been done in the past. So the aim there is to create an exam which is much closer aligned to the book, and I think that having taken it myself, that is something that I would definitely attest to. Okay, so now jumping into the changes themselves, and you know, what's changed, what's different, I don't want to go into too much detail, but if there are things that you would like to know more about, then please do send in those questions. I don't want to go into too much detail because it's how long is a piece of string, and I could talk all day about the changes that we faced. So it's a very colourful slide. I'm going to start with the pink element on the right-hand side of the screen. You might have, if you've seen any of our marketing around the update, we've used the phrase "the same but even better." So when we're talking about what's the same, the core of Prince2 is remained consistent. There's still 7 principles, 7 processes, and 7 themes, and those 7 of each are all the same. We've not changed the core of Prince2, but what we have done both across the book and the exams is look to re-emphasise certain elements. So if I start with the book or the guidance of Prince2, what have we changed? So there's now a much stronger emphasis on tailoring Prince2 to the needs of an organisation and a project environment. So how does this actually look in reality? Firstly, tailoring is introduced much earlier in the book, so it's now chapter 4, whereas previously it was chapter 21. And this chapter is really looking at introducing what tailoring is, why is it important, and how it relates to Prince2. But then also, and please excuse the pun, tailoring is also a thread which runs throughout the guidance as well. So if we look at each theme chapter, for example, some of the new elements which are brought into it are, for example, it states what the minimum requirement for the Prince2 project is within that theme. So, for example, just to illustrate that a little bit further, with the business case, one of the lines in the book is around you need to document the business justification, or document and maintain the business justification for the project, and this is usually done in a business case. But I think that change in language is, yes, it could be a business case. You know, when you say business case, you think a reasonably sized document, but you know, if you wanted to, it could be PowerPoint slides, it could be post-it notes on a wall. And then I think as well, if I just take the organisation theme as an example, there's sort of the minimum requirements involve things like ensuring that the executive and the project manager roles aren't filled by the same person, things like that. At the back of each theme and process chapter, we've also offered additional guidance on how to tailor Prince2 in given situations. So this is some of the examples that are called out. So what can you do if it's a simple project? So for example, you know, what can you take out of the business case? There are other examples or other specific guidances around managing a project which is part of a program, and also when working in an agile environment. So this is specific guidance around how you would tailor in those given environments or contexts. So it's not a case of you know, Prince2 has gone agile, or sorry, Prince2 is you know, has to be definitely run in an agile way. The book is very much, if you would like to run your Prince2 in an agile way, sorry, your Prince2 project in an agile way, this is some of the things that you should be considering to do that. We've also given a stronger emphasis in the guidance around the principles that underpin Prince2. I think, you know, if that feeds into tailoring again, these are the core fundamental principles that you must be following in order to be running a Prince2 project. And also we've given a lot more effort on the practical application of the guidance. So if you have had a chance to look at the book or download the tailoring chapter that's available to download on axelos.com, there's lots of practical hints and tips and call-out boxes throughout the guidance, which again, it's just giving some additional flavour and thought around how you would apply Prince2 in a real-world example. Okay, moving on to the exams themselves. So I think, again, the changes to the exams, we could spend a while talking about this. I'll try and keep it to the level which does give you some idea around the changes, but not go into too much depth. If we take the foundation first, I think the simplest way to describe it is it's a much more efficient exam. It's focusing a lot more on testing candidates on what the core of PRINCE2 is. We've added assessment criteria around tailoring as well, and we've removed things which aren't part of the core. So things like configuration management have been reduced in terms of the emphasis on them. And we've also featured the principles more prominently as well. Structurally, we've changed it slightly. So we've dropped the number of questions down from 75 to 60 in the same amount of time. So it's nice and simple, 1 minute per question. But we have, to sort of offset that, increased the pass mark ever so slightly to 55%. It was previously 50%. If we look at the practitioner exam, again, we think this is a much leaner and much more efficient exam. We've made sure that it now tests candidates on all parts of the PRINCE2 method, which was not the case in the 2009 version. And we've also readjusted the emphasis so that there's more questions around the principles, and we've also reduced the number of question types. So if anyone thinks back to their PRINCE2 exam, we've dropped things like assertion reason questions, and I think we feel that this exam is testing the candidate less on their ability to understand the language of the question and more about their ability or their knowledge and their ability to apply PRINCE2 to a given context. It's still scenario based with multiple choice questions off the back of it, but there are now two types of questions. One which is asking a candidate to get the right answer, and the second, at a slightly harder level, is answering the question. They have to get it yes because of this, yes because of this, no because of that, and no because of that. So you're having to give the reason why it's correct or the reason why it's wrong. We've also shifted the exam in terms of the number of marks. It's now been reduced to 68 in the same time allowed, and the pass mark has stayed more or less the same, looking at approximately 55%. If you do have more questions about the exam, please do not hesitate to ask in the Q&A, and I'll look to get any of those answered at the end of the session. And then the final piece that's being updated with the PRINCE2 2017 update is the way in which practitioners can remain current, and I'll look to cover this in more detail at the end of the in a future slide. This is usually the area which produces the most questions. So if I'm not clear at any time, please do let me know, and I will look to answer that question. Before I do, though, I wanted to just quickly focus on why we're focusing on tailoring so much in the update. I think previously what we've seen is that the adoption of PRINCE2 has been a bit of a sliding scale. On the one side, you've got people who are adopting PRINCE2 in name only, or if you take the acronym PINO, sadly not the wine. And these characters will be saying they're adopting PRINCE2, but actually look at what they're doing and they're not adhering to any of it. And then on the other end of the scale, you've got the PRINCE2 zealot who's religiously following the guidance and is quoting, various pages, various paragraphs from pages, and that's why they're doing it in that way. PRINCE2 was never developed or designed to be like that. It's very much to be, one of the principles is that you must tailor PRINCE2, and it can be tailored to the individual project manager, the environment they're working in, what is required from the project, and so we felt that by not examining people on it and not having it as present in the book as it should be, it gave rise to the sort of, I'd say, poor examples of adopting PRINCE2. And I think over the years, because PRINCE2's rise in popularity and adoption has sort of coincided with the waterfall approach, being predominant within project management, it's led rise to the belief that PRINCE2 is a waterfall approach to project management, which it is not solely. There's a word missing from the slide. PRINCE2 is not solely a waterfall approach. You can use PRINCE2 as a waterfall approach, but you could also use it in an agile way as well. So by bringing tailoring, as I've explained, here's the fun again, as a thread running throughout both the guidance and the exam, we hope that this is really going to help people, whatever their project environment, to help actually adopt PRINCE2 and gain value from it, which I think has not necessarily always been the case. I think just the final point I wanted to make on this slide is you'll notice a lot of the imagery focuses around that shape you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. This is a tangram, which is I believe it started as a Chinese toy. But the idea of the tangram is that the shapes can be moved around to create other shapes, which hopefully you'll see throughout the presentation. And this is very much to give kudos, I suppose, to the flexibility and of the update and how it can be tailored into and used in many different environments and many different scenarios. Okay, so before I do look at the update to the membership, sorry, the re-registration remaining current, I'm just going to quickly run through some of the benefits that we see with this update to PRINCE2. I've really covered a lot of these points already, but I think we believe that the new exams test candidates in a much better way, and I, having taken the practitioner exam, can very much attest to that. There's a lot less flicking around the books, and I'd say it's much less important to have to tab up the whole of your PRINCE2 manual just so you can navigate your way through the practitioner exam. We believe that the guidance and the exams and hopefully the way in which PRINCE2 will be trained will make it a much more sort of practical and relevant guidance for practitioners. But we believe, because of the nature of the update as well, it's not only, well, it will build on existing investment that people have made in PRINCE2. So if you are an organisation who has traditionally adopted PRINCE2, then this isn't going to invalidate any of your previous investment or work. But we also hope that it will increase the appeal of PRINCE2 for organisations and practitioners who are yet to adopt the method. So I think I could probably sum that all up in terms of what I was saying in the previous slide around this change in mindset towards PRINCE2 in terms of the value it brings, how it can be used, and the way people adopt it in their projects. Okay, so the promised slide around how we're updating the way in which practitioners can remain current. So I think the first thing I'd like to say is, and I'm sure that there are a number of PRINCE2 practitioners on the line today, nothing is being invalidated on a current PRINCE2 practitioner certificate. So if your practitioner certificate expires in 2020, that is still valid until 2020. Nothing changes on that, so please do not worry about that. But for anyone who does take the new exam, we are updating the way in which people will remain current going forward. I think the first thing to state is that there will be no re-registration exam for the new practitioner exam. And just in case you're not familiar with that, re-registration exam was a cut-down version of the practitioner exam. Some people found it very useful, some people didn't. If you do want to remain current through the certification, or through the exam, I should say, then you do have the option to just retake the exam. We have dropped the expiry date on the certificate down to 3 years, and I think this is to reflect the way in which, or the feedback we got, and the way in which people felt that 5 years was too long, particularly when you could just go in and take a very short, cut-down exam, and it wasn't a particularly good way of demonstrating that the practitioner had actually remained or kept their knowledge current and remained up to date. And then the new, the new element, the big new element of this is that there is a new way in which Prince2 practitioners can remain current, and this is through our membership program, which is part of Axelos.com. So the main elements of the new program are, in short, when you join, you will be issued with a digital badge, which you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. Now, the digital badge is it's a online profile, which, in short, shows that you have maintained your currency for however long you have. Unfortunately, to save technology, I could show you mine. It's an online profile which is done through something called a claim, which is an independent company which makes these badges, and it goes along. It's a way to validate that your certificate and your continuing professional development is current, and it can be attached, or you can link through from an online CV or your LinkedIn profile, etc. But how do you maintain this badge? This is basically you need to have an active subscription with Prince2 membership, and you need to complete 20 CPD points across or every year. Now, how do you attain these points? These can be done through anything from related training. There doesn't have to be an Axelos course. It could be something like a change management, agile project management, for example, as long as you can relate it to your role and that it's adding value to professional development. Points can also be gained through reading content, through attending conferences, attending sessions like today. The only stipulation is 5 of those points must be obtained through professional experience. So you need to give detail around projects that you have worked on, that have sort of what you've learned from them, what skills you used, etc. Now, in terms of maintaining your currency, and in terms of how this relates to that 3-year expiry date on the Prince2 practitioner certificate, if you join the subscription and you maintain that badge for 3 years, so getting those 20 points each year, at the end of that period you will be issued with a new certificate with another 3-year expiry date on it. The other option is you can just maintain it on a yearly basis. So, for example, if you have the 2009 version of the practitioner exam, we do accept you just joining the scheme and maintaining it on a year-to-year basis. The only thing that doesn't give you access to is the new 3-year certificate. That is just for people who have the 2017 practitioner exam. So I think those are sort of the major points I wanted to cover around that. I'm sure you will have some questions, so please do send them in if I haven't been clear. The 2 other points that I wanted to make were, as part of the update, we made 2 changes to the Prince2 membership scheme, which we hope will make it a lot more, I suppose, appealing to the market. The first is that we will be giving away or including the first year of the membership for free, or not for free. It is included within every Prince2 2017 practitioner exam, and that can be claimed after taking that exam. We have then also reduced the price for the subscription. So previously there was a registration fee which has now been scrapped, and it's been the price has actually been halved, and it is roughly 85 Australian dollars per year. So we believe it's a very sort of attractive price versus the sort of re-registration approach that has been available in the past. And we also believe that this is a way in which I think really kind of growing up the project management industry, or the PRINCE2 industry, in so much as people who are part of this scheme will have really demonstrated an investment in their professional development, and we hope it's a way in which practitioners who are investors can be rewarded for investing that time and effort in their professional development and staying up to date with everything within the project management world. Okay, and so now I'm just going to very quickly finish up on sort of, I think, the transition, what's next. As I've presented these slides through the year, it's sort of more focus shifted what's actually happened to versus what's to come. But just to give you an idea of the timeline, as I mentioned, we started planning and kicked off the update back in 2015. We authored the guidance and created the exams during 2016. The new guidance was published on the 18th of May, so that's available to purchase now. I think I mentioned earlier as well, the tailoring chapter that I mentioned, chapter 4, which is introduced very early, that is available to download free off Axelos.com on our PRINCE2 2017 update page. On the 16th of June, we handed the exams over to our exam institute, and the exams will be publicly available from next week. If anyone is interested in translations, I appreciate this is a predominantly English-speaking audience, but we will be commencing the translation project in Q4 of this year, once we've decided on the changes for a second impression of the book and the publishing terms. That's a very minor update, and also got lots of feedback from the initial exams and make any tweaks where necessary. So we're translating from a very high quality basis. And then the final slide from me today, just a couple of points around the transition from the old version to the new. So as I mentioned previously, the update does not in any way affect any expiry dates on your certificates at the moment. But from launch, PRINCE2 will be available in English only. The first 7 languages that will be translated are listed on the screen there and will launch next year, and the project to translate them will start at the end of this year. In terms of the English exams, though, from July, when they launch, till the end of 2017, it is possible to take both the 2009 version and the new 2017 version. So there's a crossover period there, transition from the old version to the new. But from January 2018, exams in English will be based on the update only. Non-English will still be on the 2009 version, and we'll communicate transition plans for those when we have a more confirmed timeline. But from January 2018, the English exams will only be based on the update. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. Please do send any questions in, and Louise, Rebecca, I'll hand back to you.
No worries. Tom, thank you so much for the presentation that you just did. It's very informative. We do have a few questions that just came in from our audience. So the first one's from Marvin. He asks, if you are current, if you are certified with a foundation, would you need to resit the exam? When will the new changes in the exam be implemented?
Okay, so I think I've already covered around when the exams go live, but just to reiterate that they are publicly available from the 10th of July, but obviously depending on certain training organisations will be ready at different times. In terms of the requirements, if you have the 2009 version of the foundation exam, that is a prerequisite for that is okay, the prerequisite for the new practitioner exam. Anything before that, I'm afraid, isn't, just because of the changes that have been made since then. But yes, if you have the 2009 version of the foundation, that would be fine to sit the practitioner exam.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Tom. And Craig asks, can you be more specific on the how you maintain the digital badge?
Yes, absolutely. So you have to attain the 20 points on a sort of year-to-year rolling basis. So you have 1 year to log all the points, and it can be you can obtain those. You can either sort of there's two ways you can do it. You can plan them out across the year and then go into the system and sort of tick them off that you've done them, or you can retrospectively log them to say this is what you've done. And in terms of those 20 points, the only stipulation is 5 of those points need to be obtained through professional experience. So when I do mine, having previously been part of the marketing function within Axelos, I talked about sort of marketing projects and campaigns that I ran and what I learned from them. And then those other 15 points can be obtained through attending conferences, attending sessions like today, reading content, taking training courses which are related. I think probably the thing I didn't mention, which I should have done, so apologies for that, each point roughly equates to 1 hour. So you would gain 1 point for attending today's session. You would take, if you were to conference all day, that would equate to probably near about 8 points. And the way in which we sort of you put them in the system, we don't go through and check every one. It's worked on a trust basis, and then we will audit 10% of all membership profiles to make sure that people are completing them accurately. So as soon as you submit them, you get access to that digital badge. You're not waiting on Axelos to confirm anything. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Tom. We actually have a few more questions, if that's okay with you, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Nick asks, is the PRINCE2 Agile certification still a separate module under the 2017 syllabus, or is it incorporated into the new syllabus?
Yes, PRINCE2 Agile is still very much a separate certification scheme and guidance. I think PRINCE2 Agile, the guide and the exam goes into an awful lot more detail around the different frameworks, the different tools and techniques, and how you would use each of those within PRINCE2. So it goes into an awful lot more detail around Agile. The Agile elements within the update to PRINCE2 are much lighter. We're talking maybe a paragraph or half page per theme or process about the sort of things you should consider, and also some call out boxes as well, in terms of this is what you would do. In terms of how that translates to the exam, there will be some questions around in an Agile context, is this okay? But it won't ever be anything that isn't sort of specified in the book. So I think it's much lighter touch. I think it's more around getting practitioners to think about, I suppose, yeah, there's all things they would need to think about to work in an Agile way, right? Whereas PRINCE2 Agile is still very much, I want to run a PRINCE2 project in an Agile way. This is everything I could do or use to achieve that, if that makes sense. We will be, so I would also add that we will be looking to do a very minor update to PRINCE2 Agile, just to make sure it's fully aligned to the update. So, for example, there are parts of the guidance which have been copied directly from the PRINCE2 manual, which is obviously based on the 2009 version. So we will be looking at that, but at the moment it's still very valid as it is today.
Fantastic. I think that the next question from Bradley, you've actually touched on a little bit here, but he asks, how does PRINCE2 2017 compare to PRINCE2 Agile?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very much the same. I wouldn't say that you were if you wanted to run if you wanted to learn about all the agile tools and techniques that you could use in a project environment, the new update won't do that. It's very much about these sort of things you need to consider. PRINCE2 Agile is a much more in-depth guide to tailoring PRINCE2 in an agile way.
Great, thanks for that, Tom. And Rebecca actually asked, can I obtain a digital badge now with the current 2009 exam certification while I find the time to study? Is it for the 2017 exam?
Yes, absolutely, you can. There is, so I think I mentioned, if you don't want to take the new practitioner exam, you can maintain your currency with the 2009 certificate as long as it's still valid, and maintain that badge on a yearly basis. But it is very much up to the candidate whether they would want to take the new practitioner exam. I think there's a lot of value having done it myself, and well, I probably would say that, but it's a very good course and an exam. But you can get the digital badge and the membership, or you can get the digital badge on the 2009 version. You can get PRINCE2 membership even if you don't have the qualification. There's lots in there which on top of the digital badge itself. So there's lots of content. There are quite a few of our publications are available through membership as part of that package. And there's lots of things like skills frameworks, skills assessments, and also sort of tips, videos, and the like around passing the exam.